Hey folks, Jeff Salzman here. Welcome to the Daily Evolver and This Week in the News. This week, Ankur Delight and I take a look at the culture war and some exciting new lessons Ankur has learned about mediation.
Talking about a long-term training, right, Ankur, that you did with Ken Cloke on mediation that, we both agree takes us into the future. And so here's our conversation.
Ken Cloke, he's a mediator. He spent his entire career in mediation. And mediation is this fascinating corner of the world where it seems like it's a boring dispute resolution process. And like, oh, it's interesting because lawyers are so expensive and lame. And like, here's a way to avoid lawyers. But at its core, this is the teaching of Ken Cloke, which seems like it's like a boring administrative legal thing, but at the below it, it's actually just like pure spirituality. Is that in order to progress as a species, we have to move beyond the ways that we've resolved conflicts before. And so the two ways that he sees that we've resolved conflicts is one is through power and the other is through rights. And so he has this classic example of like, if we're all in a meeting, we're hanging out, and there's an air conditioner unit on. And we have to decide actually whether we want it on or off. And some people are cold, some people are hot. Like the easiest way to do it would be to have a leader in the room who's like, it's like, maybe it's me, I'm giving this workshop, I'm giving this retreat, and I'm like, yeah, the air conditioner's on. And then it's like, well, the leader said it's on, so it's on. And as long as my authority holds, then it's just on, and we don't have to talk about it anymore. We've resolved the conflict at a certain level. And the analog in the political sphere is dictatorship. It's like one person, or, in the corporate, that's just how corporate things work. The CEO makes a decision, boom, it happens, right? All right. At some point, obviously we all know there's weaknesses to that approach. The balance of power is fragile. Maybe like someone wants to depose me, or there's a revolt in my retreat. They're like, no, we can't handle this. We're like leaving your retreat. We want our money back, or whatever it is. So the next approach is a rights-based approach, which is like, if I were a little more enlightened and less dictatorial, I would be like, oh, so I see some people are cold. We should probably just have a vote as to whether we're going to have this air conditioner on or off. And we have a vote. And then it's like the majority wins. And that way, like most of the people, most people are going to be happy. In the dictatorship, that at least one person is going to be happy. In the rights-based approach, that 51% of people are going to be happy. But as Gandhi would always say, he's like, I don't see a system where 49% of people can be unhappy as a good system. Gandhi was like really skeptical about this. And so Ken Cloke is in that tradition, I think. He's like, the rights-based approach is great. It's better than dictatorial approach, and that's what we have currently politically through this democratic system. But it really leaves a lot to be desired. And especially when there's people who consistently are not on the winning side, then they're going to lose confidence in the system, which now we're seeing, right? Like all over the US, there's like on the right and the left, there's all these people that are just like, system is broken. What do they say? It's rigged. There's this kind of vocabulary of like, it was never fair to begin with because I keep losing. And so he's like, okay, what's the next level? He's like, in the room, the next level is what he calls the interest-based approach. So we've gone from power to rights to interest. And this is where mediation is. Because mediation is like, no one's forcing anybody to come to agreement. Like there's no like arbitrator, or there's no judge saying you have to do it. The agreement is only going to hold if it's actually in people's interest, if they see it's in their interest, right? And so the interest-based approach is like, hey, why do you want that air conditioner on? Are you hot? Are you stuffy? Is that part of the room like more drafty? Like what's going on? And what are creative solutions we can do to meet everyone's need? So in the air conditioning example, he was like, what if all the people who are hot take off their coats and give it to the people who are cold? Or what if we open the windows on a certain side of things? Or what if people change their position in the room so the cold people are far away from the air conditioning or whatever the thing is. And so it just like blows the problem from one dimension to multidimensional and allows us, it's not like there's always going to be a resolution, but it allows people to think in terms of out of the zero-sum game and what are the actual resolutions possible. And so, and then he, so he has this 40-hour training that we do that's super deep, and he gets into like what forgiveness really is and what apologies really are, and what do we need to know our own interests and the self-reflection, and what do we need to be able to role play the interests of the other person, and all this like really deep stuff. And at the very end, he gives us his presentation on power and rights and interests, which he's given us before. And he's like, so, this is an 83-year-old guy. He's like, so now the next step, which I won't be doing, the next step, which you all would be doing, is figuring out how to make this interest-based approach scale to the level of a 300 million person nation state.
Yeah. Well, that's the question. But it's also useful for the, our individual lives and small groups and all of that, as we sort of work our way forward. But yeah, we're going to have a system that is different in the future, and if you look at the three systems he's talking about, they do come on sequentially. The first one is dictatorial. That's true of human history. It's also true of raising a child in a certain way.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's, rights, and those come on in some ways gradually and then all at once. So, yeah, and that's kind of where we are. And I think we're also, and even if I think of us nationally, aren't we sort of working our interests as well? I mean, at this point, it's basically what I'm seeing in terms of the trajectory of progress here is just more complexity is taken into account, to solve the problem or to move forward. And I think we're doing that, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like our legal system is this rights-based approach.
Yeah.
Right. But the presence of mediation and the fact that so many legal cases are now being taken outside of the legal system and going to mediation, whether it's like victim offender mediation or, in these like corporate cases or whatever, they're realizing that like, hey, I mean, it's all like money, right? They're realizing that it's cheaper in terms of resources and time to solve this in a way that actually appeals to people's interests. And I think part of that is because the legal system is so complicated. This is just my sense that in a clear balance of power, I could take you to court, and if I knew I was going to win, I wouldn't really care about your interests. But if the legal system is so complicated and I don't know where I am in the balance of power, or my contract was so shittily written that it's like, well, maybe you're going to win, maybe I'm going to win, I don't want to roll the dice. Then I'm going to be like, okay, is there actually a sustainable solution that takes your interest and my interest into account? Because it's like kind of a pain in the ass. I mean, it's the same with like raising a kid. I'm only going to give my kid rights, if I'm in a busy life, when I have to. Like, I'm going to use authority. No, really, like if I can be like, dude, go to bed.
Yeah.
It's way easier for me to be like, bedtime's 8 o'clock, go to bed.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to get into this rights conversation when I can no longer exert my authority just through force.
Yes. Welcome to human evolution.
Yeah, right.
Isn't that something?
So I think that's where this interest-based approach comes along, is like, okay, the rights-based approach is it's just so complicated. Like all these discussions, about, Isaiah Berlin, the two kinds of liberty, and what I have the freedom to do, what I need to be free from. These things, they're very intricate.
Yes.
And it's almost like, I mean, all these Supreme Court cases that might go one way or it might be another. And like the gay marriages thing struck down on this thing that has actually nothing to do with gay marriage, and the abortion thing, the states' rights. And it's like, all right, maybe it's just so complicated that we can't bet on it anymore. And we have to actually care what the other person wants.
Maybe so. Yeah. Systems tend to do that. They just outfox themselves. They just get too weighty, and a new simplicity wants to emerge. And that's what's interesting to me about the interests approach is what's some of the techniques of that. You talked about forgiveness, apologies. I mean, what's wanting to evolve in our consciousness that makes this possible?
So I think at the deepest level, there's two things that immediately come to mind for me. One is a willingness to humanize the other person.
Yeah.
To like understand that they exist. They have an interior. No, I have an interior. You have an interior. These interiors matter. Now that's coming online. And the other is, and this is the role of the mediator, the other is kind of emotional literacy. Like it realizes that as long as I am triggered and I have this swirl of sensations and emotions about the conflict that we have and the way that you hurt me, I'm not going to be able to think creatively. And so the mediator's role is to be able to like role play both sides and help people feel seen and heard and acknowledged and kind of diffuse their emotional bomb thing. So then they can be like, all right, now that we've like addressed that level, which is really important, now you can have access to your creative problem solving and be like, how do you actually want to timeshare your time with the kids? You know?
Why is it so magical that being seen changes the whole thing? I mean, really?
Yeah.
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 You know, from a developmental perspective, you were always increasing this circle of things that we can include and people that we can take seriously and assign moral worth and, you know, take their interiority into account and that sort of thing. And I think it creates a we space. I mean, it's like I'm here now. I know that you know I'm here. I know that you're here. And together it's not just two people. It's a new thing. It's a we space. It's a thing made up of two people. And it has its own ontology in a way. And being seen is the portal. It's the access point. You can't get there without it. There's maybe something like that, you know. But it's very, very powerful. And just as a back pocket way of living, just in everyday life, that with the people that you're running into or the people that you're judging on the television, to actually do what you can as a practice to see the world through their eyes and feel the world through their hearts. And do what you can. I mean, you're never going to get that right. Practice is, I love this. Practice is a thing we do not to be successful, but to be faithful. Isn't that nice? So yeah, so that, and that just, I don't know, I may have quoted this with you before, but it's just one of my favorite lines of poetry from a young gay poet, probably not so young anymore, Cyrus Casals. And he wrote a book called Beautiful Signor about his nights with his lover in Marrakesh. So it's very romantic. And they're in this second floor hotel room and the windows are open and the curtains are blowing. And he talks about it and it writes this beautiful poem, Beautiful Signor. And the end of it is this. He says, all night long, this lover's engine, this Pegasus, seeing and being seen, seeing and being seen. That's something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're so right, Jeff. It's just magical. It's like there's this fundamental need or hole or something that it just fills and transforms everything.
Yeah. 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 So we should do that more.
Yeah. Just a little story about that. The other day I was in the kitchen with my wife and I heard her say, she was talking, when you're with your partner and they're just talking and you're just not paying attention. And I think she was talking to somebody else. Maybe she was recording a voice memo on her phone and it wasn't really meant for me, so it was okay that I wasn't paying attention. I was doing the dishes. Right. And then I heard her say, I saw that thing you did and I really liked it. And I snapped around, like with this totally unconscious. I snapped around at the hope she was talking to me. I was like, somebody liked the thing I did? And she wasn't. She was just still in her other conversation. But I was like, whoa, I really want to be seen right now.
No, it's true. It's true. And, you know, when we think about the evolution of consciousness, the evolution of culture, and that the world of our children is going to be as different from ours as ours is from our parents and grandparents. I mean, there's the new thing that's going to come on here. And a big part of it is just what we're talking about, where we see people in a higher resolution. It's almost like the Google map. You know, instead of seeing you as black person, white person, man, woman, from the rural, from the educated, whatever, sort of filters we have to put over in order to function in this world. I mean, I'm not arguing that they're not evolutionarily appropriate in their time, but we want to raise the resolution. You know, we want to click the plus sign and see deeper, see more.
Yeah.
And we're in the process of that. I mean, it's hard to overestimate the power of social media in that way. I mean, it has its negative consequences, but in terms of seeing each other, Ankur, I mean, good Lord, look at how humanity is seeing itself right now in ways that 20 years ago were unthinkable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Right on schedule, I hope.
But you believe.
I have faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have faith in that it's going to be something like that. Yeah. Because that would be the continuation of what we've been doing so far, which has been increasing our circle.
Yeah.
You know, and just like every child does, they increase their circle from mom to dad to grandma to aunts and uncles to the town to, you know, that's what we do. And some people stop at the town. They become their whole adulthood.
Yeah.
In the town. And that's great. And they get to be here and be who they are. And then some people are more national. And then there are people who move to world centric. And that's where they feel like a citizen of the world. They take everybody into account, at least try. You know, it's again a practice. And then there's cosmocentric, where not only are you seeing the whole planet, but you're taking it into account. You're seeing the karmas of history and feeling sort of the winds of evolution, its emergence itself, you know, from the Big Bang, and actually feeling it in your, you know, you kind of unfurl a new set of sails. So there you go. That's the largest circle we have so far. And then there's people who are like, you know, communicating with the egregores or whatever they call it, the different consciousnesses from the different planets and the aliens. And I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying it's not my experience, but you know, there are
bigger circles that are
very
possible.
smart people who I respect, who are very seriously working on that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, here we are at the cutting edge of the ongoing evolution and accelerating evolution of humanity. And hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Can I put in a little pitch here for your to your listeners?
Yeah.
If anybody out there has done experiments on these large scale interest-based political approaches, like how to organize people at a town, county, state, national level, I'm really interested in learning about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's one person that pops into mind, Ryan Nakati, and I think he's in your neck of the woods up in Washington, I believe. But he has done some a session or two with the Integral Life Practice community, so he could be found there. And I know he's doing you know, work in nonprofit work with going and talking to different groups, particularly rural and urban and that sort of thing. I do think that there are people doing that. Of course, you put out a call for that. And yeah, if people have any experience with that, contact you at.
There's an email in the show notes.
There you go. Thanks, folks, for listening. This is Jeff Salzman signing off. See you at the next Daily Evolver.